Okay, well, hello and good afternoon. Welcome again to another Facebook Live of our Sister Act podcast. I'm Hurnessa Faryad. I'm the founder and one of the co-hosts of the Sister Act podcast, along with my sister friends, Dr. Sabrina Dent and Rabbi Susan Schenkman. Welcome, ladies. It's good to see you again.
Great to be together.
Yes, great to see you.
Absolutely. Before we get started, I do want to mention an event that's coming up this Saturday. The Sister Act podcast is a project of the American Muslim Institution, and they are having an event this Saturday from 4:30 to 6 p.m. And what they're doing is honoring American Muslims who are change makers during COVID and who've been heroes. And our guest speaker will be Dr. Craig Considine and a lot of other great people that they will be honoring on Saturday. So if you'd like more information, you can visit the AMI Facebook page or their website and get more information on how to register, or you can RSVP at that link if you want to copy it on the bottom, the bit.ly/AMI honor heroes for this Saturday. So looking forward to that event. Please do join. And, we always get to learn something new from everyone and get to learn how other people do things and also make new friends. So I think this would be a great way for you to engage in that conversation. Today's topic, self-care, self-love, and what that means, especially for us women in this time where, 2020 has been so controversial on so many different accounts. I think we can all say that we have so much to say on so many different levels. But today we're going to talk about what that means for us as women. And so, ladies, let's start off by talking about one thing that each one of you have done this week to exemplify this self-love and self-care and what that means. I can talk about myself. I moved into my room. I started doing my podcast in my room because I felt that, it's something that really is more intimate for me. You get to see my jewelry rack on top and a little bit of the side view here. And my kids aren't running around because normally where I was doing it before, if they would come, I would have to make sure I was on mute, and then I under the table tell them to go away. There was just so much stress. I was like, I don't need this. Let's move upstairs. And so there we go. We're in my room and we're going to, do this here. So, okay, ladies, what did you guys do?
So, well, before we even get to what we did, in fact, I believe, is that the dresser that you redid, or you did the knobs on it, or you?
Yes, you noticed. Yes, that was actually a brown wooden dresser. So I got it off of Facebook for very little. And so I like to do all these DIY projects. So I got the paint. I put like 4 layers of paint on that. I got these really pretty knobs. They're like these glass knobs. Each one was, it was a little costly, but I was like, it's okay. It's going into my room. It's part of my self-care, my self-love. And so I put it together and I brought the mirror frame from Walmart. It was like $20. And, I just put everything together. I put my jewelry out and put a little bit of a little water fountain there too, and my candles and a few of my perfumes. Just so when I look at it, it shows and it tells me who I am. And I think that's really important to have that around you.
It makes you happy. It brings you joy.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what we're talking about today. And
right?
Seeing that and knowing the joy it brought to you brings joy to me too.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad my DIY projects.
Well, also because that's not up my alley. I'm not. I look. I don't know. Maybe if I spent the time, but I always have in my mind I am not able to do things like that. So, maybe.
You'd be surprised because I never thought of myself as a DIY person or putting things together. But I think becoming a single mom and having been put into that situation, I realized how much I can do. I put a whole grill together from basically nothing to what it is now. And I was like, hey, if I can do that, everybody else can do everything, because I was not that type before at all. Sabrina, I think you're muted. We can't hear you. So there you go.
I was laughing. And listening.
Yeah. We don't need to mute ourselves on this one. We're going to have a really lively discussion and a lot of back and forths. And I think that's important. So what did you do, Sabrina, this week for yourself?
Well, because I moved recently, one of the things that I did for myself was I actually took a nap. You know what,
Mm.
what happens in terms of self-care and self-love, you like even when we're moving, we try to go and continue to get everything done. We want everything to be set up and perfect, thinking that it's just going to happen immediately. And it's like, I realized that I was exhausted. Like I moved one day, the next day I was still moving things over. So I was like, you know what, Sabrina, it is okay to take a nap. It is okay to rest and listen to your body. And I took a nap for like 3 hours. Like that's how bad I needed it. But that was part of my self-care to say, stop pushing yourself and listen to yourself. Because otherwise then you'll be sick and you won't be able to complete the rest of this at some point later. So taking a nap was the one thing that I did for myself. Also ordering dinner.
I love naps. I don't know about you. I'm at the age I'm like, oh, it's 3 o'clock. I can go take a nap right now. And my kids are like, why are you napping? I'm like, naps are great.
Yes.
Absolutely. Let's keep doing it.
Yes, I think naps are divine. I think it's so necessary. So
Yes,
to do
yes.
so, to recharge, to give yourself the break that you need. And, even if you don't fall asleep immediately, it's like an escape from being busy. So,
Right.
it's really helpful to do so, at least for me. So yeah, that was my
No, I'm in total
self-care.
agreement over here that naps are a good thing.
Yes.
As long as I don't sleep too late in the afternoon, so I can't fall asleep
Right.
at night, which
And
sometimes.
then you're up late. That's true.
It's all good. As long as it's giving you what you need, that's the most important thing. And I think that sometimes we go off of what everyone else is expecting from us and we deny ourselves things that we need. So, naps are great. I don't think I've ever taken a 3 hour nap during the day. So I think, Sabrina, you trump all of us in time, but you have been moving also. So that is stressful in and of itself. So more power to you on that.
Yeah, you know what? I found it helpful, and I wonder how you all feel about this. A friend sent me this thing on social media, and it was I'm gonna read it to you so you can see what it read. It said, "Dear women, if you can get a housekeeper, please get one. If you can get a cook, please get one. If you can get a driver, please get one. Always look for easier ways to do things. Your womanhood should not be about suffering. Normalize luxury in your life and preserve yourself." And I thought it was interesting because this post apparently was written by a man, but I think that it spoke volumes to me because, that was, I think, before the nap. And when she said that to me, I was saying, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that. And she was like, if you can, do that, and I like the fact that they talked about not suffering. And that's what happens a lot of times as women. I mean, has that been your experience? Is that, we suffer through things and
Yeah.
keep it going?
Yes.
Tell us about your suffering,
You know,
Susan, because I really want to know.
when you were saying that, I had a flashback to when Michael and I were doing our premarital counseling with a very wise rabbi in Cincinnati when we were in rabbinical school, a woman who was our professor, and we both admire and respect tremendously. Rabbi Julie Schwartz. She also was taught our professional development classes, and I, without divulging anything that Michael wouldn't want me to divulge, but in our premarital counseling sessions, one of the things that came up as something to talk about was how we were, we had different perspectives, let's say, on or desires for how the house would be kept and who is going to do that. And there are certain things that it just depends on whether it's the house you're raised in or your own comfort level with organization or mess or what have you. Anyway, we had this whole conversation, and one of the things she suggested and recommended is that, that we think about, however often we could afford it at the time, that we have somebody else come in and do some cleaning for us, because that would relieve certainly some of the stress. At the time we were both in grad school, there was very little of that happening. But that's been something that's been, I look at it as a luxury, but also has been the way I feel after the house is cleaned by somebody else, you know, not me. And when I'm doing it, and certainly for much of this COVID period, I've been, you know, doing, and I can, it's not that I can't. So, but I find that there are times that I'm muttering and I'm resentful, or if I'm doing all the picking up and the cleaning up and the, you know, the heavy duty cleaning. But it's, you know, that's definitely something that just, it takes one thing off my shoulders so that I can spend more time, you know, doing something else. But I have images. I know that the night my mom went into labor with me, she mopped herself into a corner. Actually, she didn't go into labor. I think she was induced, or maybe she was in labor. What the story is, though, she was mopping the night before she went to the hospital, and like mopped herself into a corner, which I think on so many levels, there's something to that. We spend time and energy, and probably I know I make certain things more important than they are, perhaps in the scheme of things, but it's also, you know, those things that, as I said before, bring you joy. A clean house brings me joy, you know, and I certainly, that's like a little thing, but yeah. So I love that. I think that's really great advice.
And you know, it goes against cultural norms which have been placed on us. At least we can say that, right? The cleaning for some reason has always been placed on women for
Yes.
so long that it's an expected thing for us to do. It's an expected extra chore. And I personally love cleaning, but I'm not the biggest fan of cooking. It's not that I don't enjoy eating. It's just cooking is not my thing. You know, I grew up, you know, in an Afghan household where my sisters would take 3 to 4 hours cooking a meal. And right now I don't have 3-4 hours to give to cooking this whole big meal every day. I'm like, yeah, we're gonna have pasta today.
And that's one of the
With
things
like, you know, really messy, you know, ground beef, something. You're looking at
that's
food.
one of the things that I've loved also about this time is that we've all been home. My daughter just went back to school yesterday. But I've been cooking a lot more than I usually can. And that's something that is sustaining for me, not just in the food, but the act of cooking and baking are things that I love to do. And they help me relax. They, maybe because it's so different from what I'm spending the rest of my time doing, but also I think because of the connection for me also of the idea of cooking. Actually, with both my parents cooked growing up, and so that, you know, was always something that was like a family thing. And I actually spent a few weeks with my parents and both of my sisters, and you know, we were all cooking every night, and you know, that's something that has always brought me joy. And
well, I'm glad you like cooking, Susan. I don't like cooking. I'm glad you like it, because for me, it's like a chore that I have to do. And sometimes I'm just kind of like, I really don't want to. Maybe we can get something from takeout, or you know, one of my adult kids they'll cook something. So
somebody made you a beautiful lunch last week, right? Was that last week?
That makes really good food. So you know, I'm just like, yeah, keep it up. You know, like they just put things together. I don't even know what it is, to be honest with you. It's just like made up recipes. But I'm like, hey, it's edible. It's cooked. We can have it. And she's very health conscious, so she tries to make things that are healthy, which you know helps all of us here. And so having adult kids who like to cook really helps. I was never the cook in the house. I'm the youngest of 10, so my sisters always cooked because my father would not eat anybody else's food. So I didn't cook until I got married, and then I was like, oh, I don't really like this. Like, I'll clean the house. Why don't you cook? You know, like I could do a great job scrubbing the tables.
Yeah.
There we go. If we ever get stuck anywhere, Susan, you cook, I'll clean, and then we'll get Sabrina to do something too. She can take turns. You like to cook, Sabrina?
You know what? I wouldn't say I love to cook, right? There are certain dishes, like one of my favorite things to cook is lasagna. And if I ever cook lasagna for anyone, it's an act of love because I do it from scratch. And that is a dish that my mom used to cook growing up. And, you know, she put a lot of time into it. So, you know, it depends on what the dish is. Also, my thing is chili. Like I have a certain recipe of chili, so I like to do those things. But the day in and day out of cooking, well, now I have to get used to that more. But I am also grateful for prepared foods that are in the grocery store. Like when you have certain things that are already cut up and
Yeah.
everything, sometimes it is a little more, but sometimes it helps. Like,
That's
you know,
self-love, self-preservation.
absolutely.
In the halal meat stores now, they have marinated ground chicken. I mean, those are great for patties. Like if you like it a little bit spicy, bring that home, or you can make a meatball dish. It just takes a lot of the work out of your
Right.
hand because of timing and just resources and things you have to do. You just don't have time sometimes to cook, and what does that translate into? So when we bring this concept of chores that we have to do and connect it to self-love, how does that actually get defined? Because we have our responsibilities, but what does that actually mean? So I'm in the mind frame like my responsibility is to provide food. So I'm like, there's food in the fridge, there's ingredients. Help yourself. Cook something. Right? I'm
No,
like, cooking is really not self-love in my book. But I do love to receive food. Like for me, that is a different aspect of things. But when we're talking about self-love and self-care and connecting it to our daily affairs, how do you guys see that, or have seen it throughout your life? And what were the things that you didn't do before for yourself that now you are doing that you feel like has really impacted your own vision of yourself and who you've become now?
right.
Hmm.
I think for me, one of the things most recently, and when I say this most recently, probably in the last year or so, especially with the type of work that I do, that sometimes requires that I'm on quite a bit, especially in this time of COVID, is that I've learned to. I've always been attached to my phone, my mobile phone. Like I will text, and chat and everything, but I set my phone up so after a certain time I don't receive calls, I don't receive text messages unless they come from an immediate family member, and that's only if something happens. And so I think for many years people were used to me responding at all times of the night to certain things, not necessarily work related, but also in my personal life. And it's just like it was an act of self-love and self-care for me to say no, like, and feel okay with saying the next day, I'm sorry, I'm just seeing your message, I'm responding to you now, because I can't always be on for everyone else. I can't always, my phone needs not to be pinging all throughout the night. And some of those things weren't important, right? So I think having the important people to come through, and learning to say yes to myself. And I will also say this, a big part of my saying yes to myself more also took the courage and going through therapy. I'm a big supporter of therapy and counseling. And so to go
Yes.
through that process with a professional that, could say, I need you to think about this. I need you. And what did it do to you? How did you feel because of it? And when I processed those things, then I was like, okay, I was hurting myself by not saying no. I was hurting myself by not doing this particular thing or setting boundaries. And that's another thing, setting boundaries has
Yes,
been
so
an
right.
act of
I actually agree
self-love.
with you with the whole therapy thing. I think everyone needs at least 1 or 2 sessions of therapy a month, even if you don't think you need it. I mean, it's great just to have
Yes.
someone there. You just talk about like what you went through, and they're just
Mm-hmm.
listening. There's no judgment. There's no trying to
Yes.
tell you how to fix it. They're just like me. Oh, okay. And like you said, they just make you analyze and process things. And then at the end, you're just like, oh, I feel so hurt. And this is an issue within our communities because it's not enforced. People think if you're going to therapy, if you're going to counseling, there's something wrong with you,
Mhm.
right? And then they somehow bring religion into it and say like, well, you have to keep the privacy and all this. But if you need help, if you need someone to help you process it, it's part of your faith to go and get that help, right? So we have to encourage each other in these things and make things easier because they're so accessible, right? We can go to therapists, we can go to counseling, and they're there for a reason. And I love that you brought that up because self-care, through that process of analyzing yourself and being able to set boundaries, you probably wouldn't have been able to do that self-love and self-care had you not gone to the therapist and gotten the tools that you needed to be able to put those boundaries and maybe even take people out of your life,
Mm-hmm.
right? Who don't
Yes.
really need to be there. Unfortunately, that's a reality that we have to
Yes, that is.
recognize that. Listen, according to my therapist and my processing, I don't need you in my life anymore. So shoot.
Yes. What about you, Rabbi Sue?
So I was thinking about a few things just as I was listening, and I will say there are a few things that that have always been sort of those that have always been centering for me, and one of those has always been reading. I've always loved to read since I was very, very young, and and there was definitely a period of time when I was not reading as much for me. It wasn't that I wasn't reading. I was reading things that I needed to read for work. I'm always reading different things for work, but really just to have some reading just for me, and not because there was a sense of obligation, but just for the enjoyment of it. Again, I enjoy the things I read for work as well, but just having something that is outside of that isn't a have to, if that makes sense. I always have multiple stacks of books going, but probably about, I want to say maybe about 6 or 7 years ago, I became part of a book group, and I'd been in a couple book groups before, but I really didn't have time for it, for a monthly, even just monthly, but whether it was the times that those book groups met or whatever it was. And I decided this is something that I need, that I want to do. And I kind of, I went back and forth. Do I have time for this? How my work schedule is, during the weeknights, I may not be able to do this, and then I'm going to feel badly and all this. But I will say that in the past, our kids are in 7th grade now. It was probably just after either they were in kindergarten or they were in 1st grade, and with some other moms. And it's been life-changing in many ways. Aside from the fact that now I'm reading for the sake of enjoying and reading, but also the relationships that I've developed with the women who are in this book group with me, who, we came to each other through our kids. I was friendly with some already, but really deep relationships over the years. And that's been really special and anchoring in lots of ways, and centering, as I said. And so I've loved that. And also, I'm not just reading anymore the book for book group and whatever I'm reading for work. I'm actually reading more, which has also been nice. That I'm figuring out, whether it's less whatever show I was watching on TV, or spacing that out more so I actually have the time to read, but also thinking about doing things for me. Granted, my kids are older now. When they were younger, I probably didn't have as much of that time for me, but really also making that a priority, that I'm going to spend some time reading, or I'm going to spend some time if it's cooking. But the other big things that I've really started to do a lot more. One is something that was always a part of my life, but on and off over the last number of years, just because of my schedule, I wasn't making the time for it. It was an easy one to say, oh, I don't really have time to get up early and exercise, or it was easy to figure out ways to to leave that one aside. And I've always been, I was always an athlete growing up. I ran. I'm not running anymore, doctor's orders, but I had to find some other things to do, and I just wasn't feeling great until I started exercising again regularly. And so that's been something that I'm carving out the time, even if it's like 20 minutes here or there, to do something, and sometimes for longer periods of time. But that's been something that is certainly, I feel that physically, I feel better, and I feel better mentally and emotionally as well. And the other thing that I also had never done before, that I started doing a couple of years ago, is I started meditating. And that's been something that has been life-changing. And I can't even, if you know, but it really, I didn't think that it was going to have such an impact, and really has had such an impact on my life.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Those are really great ideas that you've actually incorporated. And it's interesting how it's happening during COVID, right? Like we needed COVID to kind of gear us back into thinking about ourselves and thinking about what it is that we need. And you mentioned exercise. So like even I wasn't on that, bandwagon regularly either. And then COVID hit, and then I started, we wake up right before sunrise to pray. And so my friend and I, she lives in my neighborhood, decided to go walking. And we would walk to the Potomac River, which is 3 miles out, and then walk back. And so that became part of my daily exercise. And it's great because you're out there, you're getting the fresh air, you're giving yourself the time you need, and then you do your little workout after that as well, and then it's done, right? Like you don't have to worry about it, and your day starts early, so you're not sleeping in. And it's that type of regular regimen, doing things for yourself, that will help you become a better person. And at least for me, doing these things, I'm a better mom. I'm a nicer mom. I don't know if that makes sense. Nicer.
It makes total sense.
That's
Like,
real.
It's a nicer mom. Like I'm not like on their case. Like, why didn't you clean this? You left the dishes out. You didn't empty the dishwasher. Then I'm just kind of like, oh, okay, sweetie, can you please come and empty out the dishwasher that you were supposed to do 5 hours ago? But maybe you can do it now. It's because I'm giving myself what I need, and what I need is outside of my kids.
Right.
And it's okay to say that. I don't understand why people sometimes even have a problem saying that if you're a mother or a father that's saying, I need to do things that are outside of my family members, that's not being selfish. It's being cognizant of what you need and giving yourself what you need so that you can be a better person for everybody else around you and for yourself at the same time, especially for women, because we're taught to sacrifice our health, our time, our energy for everyone else, and then we're drained, and then we end up with some kind of illness that's not curable, and then we suffer through that also, and then we die.
Right.
And I've seen the cycle, and you guys have seen it too. So it's so important that you said that, because it's all around. It's spiritual, it's physical, it's emotional, all these things that we need. We have to figure out what it is that we need, and we have to give it to ourselves so that we can be a better person to ourselves, and really helps us move ahead in life, whether it's career, our relationships, our family, our interpersonal skills, and the work that we're doing on so many different levels. One of the things that I've always enjoyed is going to the movies. That's been like my thing. And because I'm an extrovert, doing things alone has never been a normal thing for me. So I've always done things in crowds. But then one day I was like, you know what? Let me go watch this. This was before COVID, and let me go watch this movie by myself. And I went, and I was so, happy and proud of myself that I sat through the movie, not had to have a conversation with the person next to me, especially if it's a comedy, because what ends up happening is if it's something funny, I end up slapping the person next to me.
That's
all
me.
all my friends know that. They're like, oh, I got hit by Hootie. Like, wasn't that so funny? And they're like, it really wasn't, but now that you hit me and you start cracking up, I guess I should laugh too. So, having been doing that during COVID, I went for the first time last week because Regal opened up again, and I have like this monthly membership thing. And so I just looked, and there was like literally 3 people in the theater and on different rows, so everybody was spaced out. And so, and so of course the movie I pick, because of my multi-faith work, was Infidel. Here I'm thinking self-care, I'm going to go watch this movie. And at the end of it, and not even at the end, all the way in the beginning, I'm like, wrong choice of a movie. Because all my work that I've been doing in this space, I'm like, no, this is completely counteracting all the work that we're doing in this space, because now all of this messaging that is not about who we are is being portrayed in this movie. So, again, it's finding those things that you really like to do, doing them for yourself, even if it's alone, right? So, I mean, have you guys experienced that, where like now you're doing things even if it's alone and no one else is joining you? And how does that actually translate in who you've actually allowed yourself to become?
Right. I think that you brought up an important point, Harinessa. One of the things that you said is you talked about how some people have guilt of not doing things without their kids or without the significant other. And I think it's important, especially for women, to realize you are a whole person by yourself, right? It's like you have to acknowledge that you are a whole person with feelings, with needs, with desires, with wants, and they need to be acknowledged. And so, like, for me, I think also speaking my truth, like, has been a way of showing self-care and self-love towards myself, like speaking my truth about who I am, what it is that I desire in life. I remember years ago, I was, and I don't know if they'll ever see this, but I was dating someone, and I had just finished my master's, and I had no intentions at the time of going to get a doctorate. It really wasn't on the radar, but I knew that there was something more. And what was said to me was, when are you going to stop going to school? And I thought, this is very interesting, but I had to put into perspective that person's life and, you know, what they were used to, and also what I wanted for myself. So self-care was also saying, like, these are my goals, these are my dreams, these are my ambitions, and this is something I want to pursue. And at the same time, as a mom, I can still carve out time to make sure that I am encouraging and inspiring my child to do the work. So, so for me, like, it's, I would say this has been a journey, but in COVID, it has really, like, shown itself more than anything. I mean, the act of where I am even right now, but this is part of speaking my truth. My move has been something that was an act of self-care and self-love. And so, you know, I'm not going to cry on this webinar, but it is a reminder of remembering Sabrina. And that was part of the work for me, even in therapy, was just like remembering myself. Although I tend to remember my child, I tend to remember my family, but it's like, you need to remember yourself. And then also be okay with pushing out other voices, like the people that that genuinely have good intentions and love you, but it might not be the time for them to engage you. Like, I you know, it's so for me, I think this is what has happened for me in COVID, is recognizing, having this reckoning with myself, and realizing that, you know what, it's going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. All is well. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, you have to do that though. There's no, and again, that's part of being human, right? And
Yes.
self-care sometimes does require for you to get people out of your life that don't need to be there, especially if they're negative, or if they're putting you down, if they're bringing bad vibes, or they're just making life difficult for you. You know, unless they're family members and you can't really get rid of them, but you know, you can work around that in some way or form. But you know, right? Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's also, you know, there's, I think we often think of it, or many women, and I myself included at times, and friends, we certainly had this conversation, that either I'm doing everything for others, for family, for my kids, for my congregants, or myself. Like, it's that it's not one or the other, but that there's little time for me, and then there's all this time spent on everyone else. And one of the things that I've done a lot of during this COVID time is figuring out some ways to combine too. So for example, I've been taking walks around my neighborhood, which I've loved. And certainly I did a lot more of that, you know, earlier in the summer. The last month, or maybe a little bit more with the high holidays, was a little bit more hectic. So I it didn't always work in the same way, but I would often, you know, have someone come along with me. Or, you know, I found my oldest daughter, Isabel, was more than happy to take a walk with me when the timing worked. And so that was often our thing, and some time together. My husband and I started taking walks in the evening after dinner, especially like during the summer, there were activities that the kids had in the evening, then we were able to do that. And I also didn't feel like I was taking away from time that I would be spending with them, or even just, you know, spending time cooking with them too. Those are just, I find that I still feel like I'm doing something for me, but also not giving up the time with them, which, you know, if I'm working all day, I want to be able to spend the time with them as well. And if I'm doing that and then trying to do whatever I need for me, I'm going to be up too late. I'm going to be exhausted. And it's even, you know, we often, when we love movies in our house as well. We have not been back to the theater yet, but I know that day will come. But even in picking whatever movie we're going to watch. You know, we spend so much time worrying about, well, getting the kids to agree on a movie they want to watch.
Yeah.
And so every once in a while, I've started doing this more and more. I'll say, oh, we're going to watch this. Something that I loved or that I want to see, that, you know, that I feel like they should see. And that's been also been fun, because it's also giving them this insight into who I am and what I like. Because if I'm showing them a movie that that I watched when I was in high school, or something that I really love, then it also is letting them know a little bit more about who I am.
No, that's really great. That's such an initiative for you to take that step and say, well, we're going to watch this because.
Well, I had to be successful the first couple times in order for them to go along with it the next time.
Oh, so you have to really pick the right movies, knowing that they're going to like it. I'm like, oh God, we do not want to watch that movie, Mom. Yeah.
Yeah, I just did it last night. Like I chose the movie. I was like, the other day we watched everything that you wanted to watch. I was like, I said, let's watch something I want to watch. And it just so happens it worked in his benefit, because I wanted to watch Spider-Man, the universe, the one with Miles Morales in it. So he was thrilled about it. But I mean, yeah, to choose the movie and to help him to see like a different side of mommy, like, okay, that's important.
What do you ladies think about when you think about self-love and self-care and connecting that to teaching your children to be independent? How do you correlate that? Because for me, that was one of the biggest things I wanted my kids to have, even from the time they were born. And that goes back to how I was raised when I came to this country. I was 5 years old, did not speak a lick of English. My father did not speak English. My elder siblings did not speak English. So I had to actually do everything myself, to the point where I became the form filler for my family. Census would come, I would fill out the form. Go to the doctor, I would fill out the form. And, I'm like the 7-year-old going around doing adult stuff. And no one ever checked my homework. No one asked me what I needed, because they just didn't understand how things worked here. It wasn't their fault. And that really gave me an insight to see that I don't have to, be over my kid's shoulder every 5 seconds. So what I started doing with them, and I have my degree in elementary education and English literature, so I understand the whole concept of what that is encompassed with. But what I started doing with my eldest from the time she was in first grade was I would not sit with her to do homework or do anything, because she was old enough to do her work herself. Unless she needed help with the concept, then I would sit down and help her. Or if I didn't understand it as time went by, I would get her a tutor. But I did not hover over my children and their schoolwork. And now it's at a point where they know exactly what they have to do without me having to tell them to do it. Is because I've given them that independence from the beginning, so that they understand that they are able to do it. And mommy's only coming when you need supplies for your project, or if you really don't understand a concept, to get you someone who can help you with that, because they're able to do it, because I was able to do it, and I came from a non-English speaking family. So that has actually helped me now, even with distance learning. My 2 youngest ones are in middle school. I'm not hovering over them. I asked them, did you do your work? Did you do this? Did you do that? Yes. I could check it on Parent View and see what they're doing. But I need to give them that independence so that they are able to live life in the most productive way for them, because I'm not going to be around forever, right? And my second oldest daughter, she's almost 19. She told me, she's like, Mom, thanks for teaching us and raising us to be independent, because we're not, hovering over you, or you're hovering over us and doing everything for us. And I told her, I said, I don't want to raise children like that. Number one, you need to know how to learn to live life. And it makes it easier on me as one parent in the house, so that I am not struggling with 15 different things to do at the same time. And that for me is self-love, is that I can give my children that ability to do things on their own. So I wanted to kind of take, your take on this, because you both have children, and how does that resonate in your family?
Right. So, I mean, one of the things that you mentioned as far as like the distance learning right now, Xavier takes great initiative as far as the classes are concerned. I remember, I think it was last week, I freaked out because the schedule had changed from the first week. And so, I was just like, oh my goodness. And he was on it. He had communicated with his teacher. I had communicated with the teacher via email, because I just wanted her to know that he wasn't skipping school.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
he was on it. You know, I asked her for the schedule. He had already received the schedule. I had set even on my phone, I had set alarms for every class period that changes. But and I'll usually shout out like, "Hey, are you in class?" And he was like, "Yes." And so you know, he's already on it. So you're right. I don't have to hover over him. For me, it was just with the changes happening. I wanted to make sure that he was on point and that teachers weren't missing him. But that helps me tremendously. If I was the type of parent that had to hover over him, I would not be able to get any work done. And so the fact that he's able to turn on his iPad, do what he has to do, you know, there are still some things that as a child, I still have to say, "Hey, buddy, can you do this?" Like, you know, he's, you know, some things he doesn't volunteer to do, but once he's asked to do it, like taking out the trash. But there are other things that, you know, it does help. And as I have told Xavier, I said, my thing is I want to raise you because to you know, to be self-sufficient, because I'm not always going to be around, and nor will I always be around to protect him either. So it's an act of self-love and self-care for myself right now, but it's also a part of his development and his growth. So when he does, if he decides to go to college, and I say that because I don't want to presume that that's what he's going to do. I would love for him to do that, but you know, wherever he goes in life, that he will be that self-sufficient adult, and that he will also have the emotional intelligence to navigate life. And I think that's important as well for people, because people want their children to be smart and book smart and, you know, everything, but you also have to have emotional intelligence in order to navigate life. And that, you know, is important also for self-love too, because if you don't have that, then there's some things that you might lack within yourself to be an efficient, you know, adult and everything. So those are some of the ways in which, so yeah, I mean, it helps. And also it helps that he, truth be told, it helps that he likes the microwave macaroni and cheese, because he can fix that himself.
Hey,
like,
who doesn't like mac and cheese?
right.
Susan, how about you?
So I think one of the, you know, I used to feel, I used to have a lot of guilt for being a working mom, full-time working mom, and figuring out how to make sure that I was present and being at things with my kids. But I definitely think that because I was working, there were times that I wasn't home. I mean, one of my kids is very good about reminding me that I'm not always home in the afternoon when they're doing homework. You know, there would be things that they would wait until one of us got home to help with. But I think that's served them well. That's one of the things that, you know, and I had some very wise friends who are a little bit farther ahead of me, and who said, you know, look, you might not be there for all of the angst over homework, but at the same time, they're going to learn to do certain things because they have to, and to become self-sufficient in certain ways. I definitely had I was doing a lot of checking on Evie, who's in 7th grade, you know, early on, to make sure she was in class. You know, it was just the schedule, and getting from class to class online, etc. And so, you know, I got my hand slapped a few times. Mom, I know, can you leave me alone? Or I would text her to say, are you in? Especially like right after lunch, because she's usually talking with friends during lunch. And you know, I don't text her anymore. I learned my lesson. She's where she needs to be. And in fact, you know, a few weeks ago when we were driving up to see my parents, they'd had a couple days of school, and we had planned to drive on Wednesday because that was, according to at least the initial schedule as it appeared to me, the day that they didn't have classes, or that they'd have these check-ins. And I know for the high school kids, those check-ins are optional unless the teacher tells you need to be there. We didn't know, because it wasn't all clear yet, that the middle school kids have to be at those. And those were only like 20-minute sessions, but they had to be on those during the day, especially that first week. And so then there was a moment of panic. You know, said, how am I going to do that? We're going to be in the car. But she took it upon herself, and she emailed all her teachers on her own and said, I'm going to be in the car. I'm going to try to be on. My Wi-Fi might not work. I might get bumped off. I'll try to get, I mean, it was really well thought out. And, you know, and I think in some ways because she's also watched her older siblings and heard she's very good at listening to whatever, she's in everybody else's business. She was aware of what she needed to do.
She learned by being stupid. Okay.
Exactly. But you know, there are also certain things that I just say, you know, you're capable of doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And
but doesn't that make you feel
know,
good that you're able to give that to your kids, and it makes you feel that you've given something for yourself?
Yeah. Well, I think that there's that sense of trust that they feel. So I don't remember exactly when during COVID she started doing this, but she wanted to learn how to make scrambled eggs. So she learned how to make scrambled eggs, and now she does them on her own. And, you know, at first it was sort of like, wait, you know, the stove and getting nervous about, and then I remembered when I was her age, my mom went back to school for her master's, and she was, you know, working and in school. And there were definitely times that I was making dinner, and, you know, I was capable of doing that. Why isn't she capable of doing that? And I just, it's so important for them
it's
life skills.
Sometimes it's really hard for us as parents to think that the children can do things on their own, where we don't have to be a part of it, right? Because we're like, oh, stove, hot, burning, doing something wrong. We'd rather just not risk it, right? But it's important to realize, like, wait, I was doing the same thing at her age. She can do it now too. She might burn a few things, hopefully just food, and and learn from that. But that's the whole process of them learning and being independent. But then that translates back to you as the mother, who's not only teaching your children to be independent, but at the same time allowing yourself to give that self-love and self-care to yourself, because you can't be there doing everything for everyone all the time.
Right.
It's absolutely impossible. And it's okay for us to step back and say, I can't do this right now because it's not going to be helpful for my mental health or my physical health or my emotional health. And I just need a break from all of this. That's absolutely okay for us to say. Before we get off, I wanted to touch into one last subject with the self-love and self-care, and that's, what do we do for ourselves as a fun thing, or something that maybe only you get to benefit from that other people don't get to see. So for me, you know, we were talking about this before, is, you know, I go to the salon every 5 to 6 weeks to get my hair done. You know, in the beginning when my kids were growing up, they're like, why do you do it? No one sees your hair. And I'm like, I see my hair like everybody else. You know, like, it's not about everybody else. If that was the criteria, I wouldn't get it done, because obviously, you know, there's only limited amount of people that get to see my hair. But for me, that was important because I like to wake up, I like to see something, or if I get my hair done, it makes me feel good about myself. And why wouldn't I do that? Right? Because it's something that, you know, helps me view myself a certain way, and it gives me a certain type of confidence, even though other people don't get to see it. So what is one thing that maybe you guys do for yourself that only you get to see, or very limited amount of people get to see?
Right. My thing was going to Massage Envy. Like I would I say, you too, Sue? Oh my goodness.
I would go in the past for a monthly massage sometimes if I need more, but I mean, that's I really miss that.
Me
I definitely
too.
feel different, and that's totally for me. And and I even remember I used to do it, and I used to not turn off my phone. I don't know why, just, you know, in case somebody need. Well, now I turn off my phone when I go, but you know, that is definitely some sacred time.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
I miss that. Yeah, I do too. It was great. I did the same thing. At first I would go and my phone would still be on, but it would be on silent. But I was like, I'm turning this off completely. So I do miss it because of COVID. You know, of course, that changed everything. And then I found out, then I got the courage last week to like call to schedule an appointment, and my Massage Envy therapist is gone. So I'm like, I need to start all over. So, but that's the thing that I benefited from. And I started that when I was in like the final stages of earning my doctorate. It was just like, I need to do something for me. And And I'm glad that I did. So I do miss it, and I will go back to it. In the meantime, walking is the thing that I do. I take that time to walk and to think and to reflect. So, but I look forward to going back to Massage Envy or somewhere else.
Yeah, well,
Me too.
maybe you guys will get to go together one day.
Yes.
So maybe we can do a sister podcast.
Yes.
From a massage.
That'd be great.
I don't know how that's gonna work, but it sounds nice.
Even if I have a tradition that goes back 20 years, that the day after Yom Kippur, I always went for a massage with one of my very close friends and colleagues who I worked with for a number of years until she moved. But we still will both go and talk to each other after. So we would go at the same time, and then we'd get together for like in the same place, and then have lunch together afterwards or something, or coffee. And it's so nice to be able to share that feeling when you're done with somebody else, and just who knows, like it's like a weight lifted, and I just feel like whatever else is coming, I am in a place where I can handle it today.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's great to end this segment with massage talk and how wonderful that is. and being advocates for it, because it is really nice. But it was so nice talking to you ladies and getting to talk about this important topic of self-care and self-love and what it is that we do. So thank you for sharing what you guys go through and what helps you, because I'm pretty sure that there are people listening who will take these ideas and really run with them, because sometimes we get stuck in what that actually means,
Right.
and what self-care, what self-love actually looks like, or how do we define it. And I think the major component of that is to do what you love doing for yourself, as long as it's not harming anybody else. And that helps you grow, and that could be in any which way, physically, emotionally, mentally, but you have to do it for yourself.
Yes,
Okay,
you do.
ladies, thank you so much. It was so nice talking to you.
Yes.
Next time.
Enjoy your week.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye.